everyone. It's been about 15 minutes since we are together. And I got to tell you, I love hanging out with all of you today. So thank you. I know there are lots of places that you could be, and I'm so thankful that you are choosing to celebrate with me and with female chiropractors from all over the world. I got to start this journey last night with Dr. Lucy Cleary in Australia. And then this morning, bright and early, was Dr. Devin in Kansas. And then I've done Dr. Bobby Droscher. So I wanted to also let you guys know, if you've been looking for an amazing opportunity to have real mentorship and to leave a lasting legacy, Dr. Bobby desperately needs at least 2 chiropractors to come on at Oakland Haven to help with not only admin, but caring for kids. She's tired and she really needs our help. So if you're interested, please let me know. I will immediately put you in touch with Dr. Bobby, but this is like an SOS call. So I'm just asking if through this COVID thing, maybe your life has changed and it's going kind of in a new direction that you didn't anticipate. Please check out Oakland Haven, and maybe that's the nudge that God is putting you towards. If you have that nudge, then let's follow up on it. I'm super excited to have my good friend, Dr. Janice Hughes, with me today. Janice, welcome.
Thanks. Good morning. Wherever you are, whatever part of the world. You sound like you've been traveling. I'm envious. You've been traveling when we can't travel.
Oh man, it's been like, I'm so blessed to be like landlocked up here in Alaska. And that's one thing that has really changed. Ben and I have always had a lot of fun, but we've been so intentional about our weekend fun in COVID that most Fridays we've been taken off and no phones, and let's just get out and have a great time. And I just want to give it up to my fellow sourdoughs. That great job on being out. Like, we went to Hatcher's Pass. Have you been there when you've come to visit your son?
No.
Oh my gosh, it's so beautiful. So it's out like towards the valley, in the valley. And when we went for Memorial Day weekend, it was families and campers like galore. They were everywhere, more than I've ever seen. So I just want to say, great job, families being out and together. So our topic today is leadership in love. And I can't think of a better person to have this conversation with than Dr. Janice. Dr. Janice has been in our profession forever, and has had many different roles in our profession and outside of our profession. So Janice, I want to start with just give some background for those who don't know your journey. Where did you go to school? When did you start? And it's been like up, down, around, and all over. Give us some background. And when giving the background, give the advice that you would be giving to yourself if you were starting this journey again.
Oh yeah, that's a great point. So I graduated 30 years ago this weekend, actually. This was meant to be, so today would have typically been where I would have been up at our 30-year reunion. And obviously that's all changed from COVID. But so before, though, I did a whole bunch of schooling. I took the slow boat to China, microbiologist. So part of I guess that phase is that kind of that trust. There's some bigger divine design. I think I felt very stressed. I'm watching my own college graduate right now with the way the world is like just falling apart. And even back then, though, my personality, I felt a lot of angst or stress, and even like was pressing and pushing and, graduating, and had my son, my oldest son, while I was an intern, and that kind of that real force, that driver personality, go, 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 and just really pushing through, and had this vision for practice, and built a big booming wellness practice before there was such a thing, before I knew what I was doing. So I guess my lesson and what I learned in that is I've probably made more mistakes than any of you listening, probably as many or more than everyone combined from your whole network, Barb, like literally. So, it's okay to fail forward. It's okay to learn or to have to pivot. I've been through major changes, and for me, what felt at the time as big as COVID, like I think it's all relative. And so, then after 14 and a half years in successful practice, loving it, I transitioned and sold that to my head associate at that point, Dr. Shaylin Osborne, that Barb knows very well.
Yeah.
So then I went on to coach and teach and do a lot of travel, a lot of things in the profession. I was a coach in the profession for about 10 years. The same thing. I think I've always pivoted. For myself, I guess that message that I can share, my lesson is I pivot before I think I could, should, have to. But even if some major thing happens, I use it as an opportunity to pivot. So what is it teaching us? How could we do this differently? What can COVID do for us? Those same kinds of things. So I think because I've done a number of roles, and then I went on to raise money for a biotech. So became a businesswoman, and with the chiropractic principles, because our project is about working with kids with autism. So there's all that science behind it that's still so aligned chiropractically, but that wasn't my role. My role wasn't to create the formulation or work with the kids. My role was to be a businesswoman and make and raise money for us to stay private. And that really taught me so much. That's why for some of the modules that I did in the boot camp, it's about money mindset, and how do we apply those things to chiropractic? And that's why my love now in the last couple of years is my day-to-day role finished with the company. I'm still one of the major investors, but as the day-to-day stuff pivoted, that's what's had me come back to the profession and talking about that financial piece, which, let's face it, those are some big, powerful lessons that really apply to this COVID world. So that's kind of a real quick synopsis, but you're right. There's been major lessons along the way that I think are more pertinent now because of COVID, but also because of this racial injustice. And I've been describing that we have just gone through the largest social, health, racial injustices, like basically in a generation. And, so the health injustices are there. The racial injustices are here. So there's so much that's asking us to pivot. And I guess part of it is, are we open-hearted enough to do that?
Yeah. So let's talk about pivot. I mean, obviously you and I have helped thousands of chiropractors over the years. And there is this notion of, I think sometimes people pivot too quickly. It gets hard, or there are obstacles, and like, oh, it must not be that thing. And so they pivot and they go over here, and that's not right. And then they go over here. So how do you know when to pivot? Because you were talking about like pivoting before it becomes a crisis, but what in leading in love and knowing when to pivot, how have you determined that? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like that fine line, because there is a time that you're just going to keep, cut your losses and bail, versus this isn't that. This is pedal to the metal.
Yes. It's true. Like, I think that with pivot, people don't understand that really the tendency is to pivot way too fast, which is bailing, and or too slow, which is not trusting yourself. And so that pivot for me, I like to describe from a coaching principle, it's the difference between a head pivot and a heart pivot. Because when you are in your body, when you are in balance, when you do some of the things to center yourself, so it's not listening to, all those fear voices or all those voices around us that say, you should do this, you could do this, you have to do this. Those are the things that cause us to bail versus pedal to the metal. The other thing is sometimes as we just keep forcing and forcing and forcing, that we're so over-determined and or afraid to have some space. Like, let's face it, some of the provinces in Canada, some of the states that were actually forced to shut down. Wow. Like when we're go-getters or any of your personalities, I don't just mean drivers, but when you are juggling kids and a significant other often, and, like the practice and all of these things, and then that forced slowdown, like that's really almost like that panicky, oh my gosh, like how do I pivot right now? What do I do? How do I go back into busy mode? So again, all those things that are more head space, if you can control your thoughts, that negativity's there. Please don't think that all of us don't have it. Like, I literally had very different reasons than being in practice to be in shock about COVID. I'm straddling two countries. We were like kind of in a planned move. We own now a piece of property to build a house that we put no conditions on because there was no such thing as COVID when we did that. And my middle son just graduated in May. My youngest son is about to graduate. Like, look what they're graduating into. So my head went crazy and still does some days. Like some days when there's so much of that outside voice, so the discipline, how you get into your heart is to first quiet the mind. Mm-hmm. And we're all so different. I mean, I am not a classic sit and meditate person. Mm-hmm. I'm a moving meditation person. Like go for a hike, take the dog out, find that movement or that peace and serenity. It doesn't mean I never just sit and meditate, but like literally finding those things that help me quiet the mind, and power statements, mantras, affirmations, whatever you want to label it, that's really working on our own inner mind so that we quiet it, because that's when the real whispers come. That's when the real message is about, I keep coming back to, this is an opportunity to say, if there were no rules and I couldn't fail, what do I want this to look like? Mm-hmm. And some of you want your practice to look the same, which is phenomenal. Like that doesn't mean we're all ready to pivot and change practice, or that we're ready to pivot and change our partners or stuff with our kids. But, this is going to really bring up, I went through different stages of educating my kids and really searched for the right kinds of places and people to influence them. Mm. I was not destined to be a homeschooler. I get that. My hat's off to some of you that are trying to juggle that piece right now. Yeah. But literally, everybody's going, well, I either have to send them back to school with all these crazy ideas they've got, or I have to homeschool. And I said to one chiropractor that I was speaking with yesterday, like, why? Like, how about there's going to be all these young people that have just graduated with an education degree that will have no job. So if I was in practice and had still my young kids, guess what? I'd hire one of them.
Amen. That's right.
To be my kids' teacher and to work with me and to come up with a really cool blend of education for my kids. And so now that's easy to say when we have the finances, but that's also not going to take a lot. I talked to one of my youngest son's friends. She just graduated in May, has done all her practice teaching, all the things that are required, and there is nothing. Like she had been offered a position, a contract, and it's gone. So she isn't going to cost a lot to basically like help with some schooling, and she'd want to be able to see that she could start to pay back some student loans. So I think this is a time, like your question is great. Like, how do you know or honor those pivots? And my lessons in my own life are get out of my head and into my heart.
I love that, the thinking outside the box. One of my mantras is, when I say I don't know, that doesn't mean retreat. Just like when, oh my gosh, that's so hard, that doesn't mean retreat. That just means it's a temporary state. And I encourage all of you, like Janice was talking about, when you're concerned about like, well, what's school going to look like? And I don't want to send them there. I don't have this. I don't have that. be really, like leaders. And I learned this from Rich Christensen. There are 3 requirements of a successful leader. Number 1, cast vision, right? Like what is the vision you have for your children? What's out there? And to know that that's what I want. There may be some things that are blocking it that I have to kind of like step around, or maybe I have to do a ladder to get over on top. But number 1, cast vision. What is the vision that you have for you and your family? The second thing is create culture. What is the culture in your family? What is the culture in your practice? And the third thing is to hold accountable. So when we look at schooling your kids, like what a huge blessing to be able to bring in somebody who's just getting started. Guess what? Like they've just learned all the newest, greatest, flashiest, like they're the ones that are going to be the most excited to do cool, fun things with your kids and to give them a totally different experience. So I don't know if I can afford it. Okay. Can you find out? Like I was just talking to someone yesterday and she told me that she's been an associate for 7 years, but really wants to open her own practice because she doesn't think that she can afford to open her own practice. I'm like, well, how much do you think it's going to, like, how much is that? And she's like, I don't know. And I'm like, oh, you've been held hostage to, I don't know, for 7 years.
Yes.
So let's start cranking some numbers. Like for those of you who want to do something like this and have someone in your home to teach your kids, you don't know how much it is until you find out. Yes. And what can you imagine that you could bring in a teacher to your home? And what if that meant 10 extra adjustments a week?
Yeah.
Talk about win-win-win. Now you're serving, now you have a greater reason to step up in your community and serve your people. Now all of their lives get to radically change. Now this individual gets to enjoy their education, and now your kids get to be home and be schooled. Like there isn't a down to it.
Yeah. And you're right. Like it's that, I don't have an answer yet. I don't have enough information yet. How would I look up that? How would I find that? So it's going into that different way, literally all those 3 points you're talking about for leadership, that's when you're in your heart versus your head, like we're talking about. You can think about that. Here is that vision I'm casting. Here is the resources or the things and the people around. If you don't know someone to hire, how about there's other business women, there's other business people that are doing this same struggle that don't want to send their kids back to this totally dysfunctional system that some school programs are going to be. And so guess what? Maybe they work some opposite days that you do, and you all share that homeschool. Or years ago in practice, I had a whole homeschool network that one of their outings every week was to come to the chiropractor.
Yeah.
And, so doing some things with other families that are even homeschooling, so I think that, our point is, I don't have that answer yet. I don't have enough information yet. What next step could I take? Could I research it? Like that young woman you're describing? Well, how much would it cost to open your own practice? Often bare bones. And right now, you're going to be able to, there are signs everywhere for spaces because people can't pay the rent, and buildings that are sitting empty. So guess what? You could negotiate 3-4 months free as part of that initial negotiation.
Like so now is an amazing time to open a practice because, and it's not, I've heard some docs say, well, I don't want to take advantage of other people. You're not, you're providing a solution. You're providing a solution for maybe that chiropractor. If you came in and leased space with them, maybe they get to stay in practice. Maybe that landlord, because they have you in there and they know they're going to be able to have an income in the future from you. Maybe they don't have to sell the building. So you're not taking advantage of anyone. You're providing a solution.
Yeah.
Like you're stepping in to the gap. Yeah. Which I think is a very, very loving thing to do.
Yeah. And that's heart. That's from the heart.
That's from the heart. Like just to see that you are a solution creator. So if you're saying to yourself, I don't know, the trigger for I don't know is who knows? Who does know? And where can I find that answer?
Yeah.
Because the
You don't
answer
even
is
know it.
there.
You don't even know it's coming next week. I'm waiting for the locusts to come. Like I'm waiting for the whole next biblical piece to happen, so the whole world doesn't know right now. That's a great place to be.
Yes.
Because you might not know that next step, but just get about the business of asking or figuring out or asking for help. That's the other thing is, so many of us, we don't have an answer for you, but we can ask some really interesting questions or help hold you accountable to do the research to get that figured out.
Yes. And just answer, like, all right, you don't know. Well, if you did know, what would the answer be?
Yeah.
And so many times you probably have the answer. It's just you don't have the tool to get it out. And that's the link that's going across the bottom. That's my answer for a lot of docs that I've talked to who are like, Barb, I know I need to get going, but I just feel so stuck. And I'll have momentum for a day or two, and then I just get so bogged down. So I created an action plan for you. I don't give you all 30 days. Instead, it's just dripped. Each morning, you'll get an action step in your email. None of them take more than 7 minutes. They're likely things that you already know how to do. It's just a reminder. Mama Boot Camp coming to you to give you a reminder. And that's it. Like, there's no strings attached. It's free. All you have to do is hit that link. It's also in the comment section, and just start there. Like one step. Like, do you know how to get the next step? Yep. Click on that link. Do you know how to open your email? Yep, you do. Like, it really and truly can be that basic to get going forward.
Yeah.
So Janice, as we wrap this up, what's been a mantra? And I want to help everyone understand something about mantras and affirmations. If you don't assign a mantra and an affirmation to a physiology that you experience, they're just words, right? So you have to think about the triggers in your life. There are positive triggers and there are negative triggers. Well, the physiology and the thoughts behind them. So I want to know the mantra when you get triggered and your physiology goes into fear. What's the first mantra and thing that you tell yourself?
Actually, the mantra is the third thing. There's 3 pieces of it. I change my position. If I'm sitting, I stand. If I'm standing, if I'm engaging with someone, I pivot instantly because I have to link it to physiology. So I do physiology first, take a breath, and then I say my mantra. And for me as a driver, because it's usually that I just don't have an answer, I haven't figured it out. So my mantra is, it's not my job to figure it out. It's my job to hold the vision. It's not my job to know how. It's my job to hold the vision. So that I'm shifting, and even in my mantra, I'm talking about, I'm not doing this, I'm doing this. I am holding the vision. I am holding the vision, and so my physiology is all tied to it, because I think, like a lot of people, so Tony Robbins, who we all love, Tony talks about those mantras. You can call them power statements. So that really, even just done by itself, like you're saying, is fantastic. That I want body changes so that my physiology has pivoted, so that right while I'm doing it, I've taken that breath, I've brought life in, and I'm changing that thought. So for me, it's 3 pieces of that all together.
I love that. And the physiology is the first thing that where we feel it. Like, our physiology is going to change, whether I get excited or I get nervous. Like those terms are just describing a certain physiology. And I just want to encourage you all that in our lives, the triggers and the physiology probably aren't going to change that much, but everything else you get to rewrite. It's like subluxation patterns. Like when someone gets checked and adjusted, we rewrite those subluxation patterns for alignment with health and well-being, for alignment of optimum potential. And they're no longer a slave to that pattern. And the same is true when you get triggered. is you can create new physiology, well, the physiology, but you can create what happens after that.
Yeah.
And I love, Janice, that you said the first thing is move.
Well, it's interesting because who taught me that was my youngest son. When he was 7, we were all going to run the Boulder together. And so we're lined up, in our wave. There's like basically about 55,000 people run this event. Now it's obviously canceled this year, but that he was 7 and we're in our wave, we're lined up, and I'm kind of linked right beside him. And my husband's right there with our middle son. Our oldest son is nowhere to be found in this crowd. But my youngest son, before the gun goes off, because even though you're not in the competitive, pro phase, they still do the gun, the start, so that everybody feels like, what are they doing? They're getting your physiology excited.
Yes.
7-year-old is bouncing on his little running shoes and he says, I'm so tingly. And that's his physiology. That's his excitement. And I'm going, crap, we're running a 10K. Like who am I with? So I'm thinking differently. But right away, he taught me that the more we acknowledge that physiology, that's state management. Tons of people use affirmations and mantras and they don't work. And as a coach, they've told me that for years. Oh, I've done the goal thing. I've done the mantra thing. Well, because you've never linked it to physiology.
Yes.
So my 7-year-old, who's now 22 and a half, he literally taught me that. And again, it's that I'm so tingly.
So tingly.
What brings that is your breath. So that's why I link a deep breath, because then my cells are tingly. Like I've just brought life into my body while I'm saying that mantra. And it totally shifts me, pivots me.
That is a great place to say goodbye to all of you. Let's create tingly days.
Yes.
So happy National Women Chiropractors Day to all of you. Janice, thank you so much for sharing with us today and just being a great friend and an awesome leader in our profession.
Likewise. Thanks for having me. Have a great day.
Awesome. Have a great day, everyone. God bless you. Bye-bye.
Tingly day. Have a very tingly day.
A tingly day. Bye-bye.
Bye.